Greetings, community. It's Kevin from 1 2 Comic Talk with another Artist Alley. And without further ado, actually, let's bring in our co host, Christy Shin, with a major announcement.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, Christy.
So,
How
major
are you?
announcement. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm just like kind of being taking it lazy today, but yeah, it's been kind of cool. Just been kind of relaxed for a long time because goddamn, you have those world events and shit. First, like you have a meteoric rise, the world events kind of batter you left and forth, and right now, and you're trying to keep it sane, and you're doing this because you want to keep sane and but yet it's making you insane on a certain level. So I got to say this: I funded my Kickstarter yesterday.
And that's the major announcement, community. You
Three
know,
more days to go.
if it wasn't for you guys and everyone else that have been, backing her since day one, I mean, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah,
And I am so happy for you, Chrissy. This is awesome. I mean, I don't know, I can't choose your words for you, but I can imagine that beyond feeling like relaxed overall, it must be like a heavy relief because Kickstarters are stressful. People don't get that.
well, it's like interesting because this one kind of challenged me on a little bit because I've run two successful ones before. I'm going to say
Mm-hmm.
this: there's a certain pattern to them, but not all of them work the same. Okay, not all of them work the same, and everyone will be different due to timing, due to promo, due to your experience. It's just how you handle it. And there were
Mm-hmm.
times like I was literally like, especially during the riots, I was like, maybe I should just say fuck it and pull it and just do it again. But I did it. Somehow I just kept doing it. And that was the period of the slowest growth, but I still had gains. But then I would like afterwards, I had like growth spurts of 6% over a day, like twice in a row or something. So it was good. I mean, I'm saying, guys, if you haven't, and again, I mean, I'm not trying to do a shameless plug, but since like I'm talking right now, I've got 3 more days left. It's funded. You're gonna get the product anyway, so just might as well throw gravy on it and shit.
Sure. Oh, and actually, to even kind of segue to our guest,
Yeah,
it's the same offense. This is an individual that has gone through the same, basically, has trudged through the same muddy waters of you to go ahead and bring upon, a few stories, and two of which that really hit me hard, and one of which we're going to discuss today. But before I get too far and ahead of ourselves, let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Stephen Prince.
Hey everybody.
hey Steve.
You
How you
funded,
doing, sir?
Christy?
My what?
I
My
said you
fight?
funded. How much is this going to cost me now?
It, it's a five thousand
Ah,
five hundred. It's right now at. Thank you, some comic book
Yeah,
hunter. Yeah, so I'm at. Let's see. Oh, I'm looking at yours. I'm at 5,508.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, goddamn, I feel like the USS Demon Bitch just took a
Yeah,
Gord Anthony skull dragging and a
yeah.
sucker punch
But
on them.
your campaigns like historically seem to have done that, where you kind of like you hit it and then you get this big burst at the end. I remember that the last campaign you did was the same thing, where it's like, oh, is she going to do it? Is she going to do it? Is she going to do it? And then you just like same thing, like 4 or 5 days before you just cleared it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like generally, like on average, I found out with my Kickstarters, if it's barring an average normal time,
right,
probably like 2 weeks I fund completely. And then I have personal goals and stretch goals.
right.
The situation kind of fucked everything up. So I
Yeah,
put
yeah,
everything in there and I said, here, dude, just keep it there. Like, let's keep it going.
yeah.
So it's like I want to add the gravy. I mean, I can still do it, but it's like, it's
Mhm.
like different than what I had to do. So I had to
Right.
adapt. So
so, Stephen, now you've been active for some time, and you've actually worked your way. And when I mean active, I mean you've been active in the industry in the sense of you've touched on
Yeah.
toys. You played with books in the sense of you've done novel.
Mhm.
You've worked your way into, because people will kind of start with comics and go to novels, or you know what I mean.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you've decided to play with a pretty good gambit of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But as far as to go ahead and bring some semblance to the community, can you go ahead and give us like a small bio and kind of bring us up to, which is one of my favorite stories, unemployment?
Sure. So I mean, I've been making comics, for as long as I can remember. probably, when I was a kid, I used to photocopy and staple stuff I drew. I used to love like Mad Magazine. I remember I used to draw like fake ads and things like that and make like little magazines for my friends. I did that, in high school. I would do zines, which is what was popular back then. It was kind of the equivalent of a blog, I guess. And in college too, I got into a little bit of controversy with a little zine I did in college because I made fun of fraternities. And I was called. It was the weirdest thing. It was during like the school elections, and I did a thing about like, I don't know, how to spot a frat guy in the wild or something like that, and I got somehow drawn into the election as if I was compared to Joseph Goebbels, who was spreading like propaganda against fraternities and whatever.
But you're Jewish.
Right. Well, it was funny too because one of my best friends, I mean, a lot of my good friends were in fraternities. One of my best friends was in a fraternity, and he called me. He's like, "Dude, what are you doing? What's going on?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "This cartoon everyone's talking about." I'm like, "This is the one I showed you like the other week that I was doing." It's like turned into this crazy thing.
That's great.
I did like political cartoons in the school newspaper. And then I got like a real job, I was in advertising for a while. I was a copywriter, and then I just kind of like got sick of it and I hated it because it's creative, but it's definitely like, it's a different kind of creative and it's kind of soul sucking. I moved out to LA and like everybody else, I started writing screenplays, and then, I worked at Disney for a while. Just like an office job. And then I wound up in the toy industry. Mm-hmm. And I was in marketing and product development. And I developed brands for, toy brands. There's a brand called In My Pocket, Puppy in My Pocket, Jungle in My Pocket. Pretty much anything you can put in your pocket. We did a brand called Stink Blasters. I created a toy line called Power Bugs, which we developed into an animated series. We had a big showing at an industry convention called MIPCon, trailer, everything. Some of the early toys hit the toy stores, and then literally the day my show was going into production, after I'd approved 65 scripts or whatever, we went out of business.
Oh, fuck.
One of our distributors went out of business, owing us a lot of money, and basically just threw everything into whack. And it sucks, yeah. And this was like 2011. At that point, I was like, I was unemployed, and that's where Unemployant came from. It kind of came out, and I'm like, I kind of wanted to get back to doing comics again. I wanted to start drawing again. I hadn't drawn in like years, really. And Unemployant was just kind of this way for me to get those muscles back. It's a really crude looking book, but it's ants underground, so it kind of fits the tone of it.
Yes.
But like, what I was doing was the actual like pencil and underlying drawings were like really me working out the drawing part, and then the crudeness is like the inking and whatever. But that Unemployant was basically my experience as being unemployed at the time. And most of the stuff I talk about there is true. Like, the people hanging up on me and things like that. I mean, all those are like real experiences. And it was interesting at the time when that came out, there was a big sort of, at least publicly, being unemployed was sort of, well, I think, and in some ways it's come back to that now a little bit, but it was seen as, well, that's a choice. If you wanted to just go out and get a job, it's, easy. And people who weren't unemployed at the time would read that and go, oh my God, this is so depressing. Like, this is, what I mean? But people who were unemployed were reading it and being like, yep, this is, there was people who had been through that experience got it. Whereas if you hadn't been through that experience, people are like, oh no, it can't be that bad,
Yeah, it's like,
but it really is. Yeah, it's.
Well, you had given me what we're going to talk about in a little bit, but you had also given me to read Unemployant. and
Yeah,
and I had first read Monster Matador.
Yeah.
I admit that was the first thing I'd read
Yeah.
because I knew that was going to be the topic of interest. However, when I read Unemployment, it resonated with me so much because I was thinking to myself, there cannot. Initially, I was thinking I thought it was only me that had felt this, or maybe this a couple.
Yeah.
But there's so many instances, so many examples.
Yeah.
That I believe that everyone. I don't think there's anyone out there that hasn't experienced one aspect of what you described in that story. I would challenge somebody to say I didn't feel that at some point.
Yeah.
So that really hit me hard. It was like, oh shit. And to put a little icing on this, what you had done is, with the irony of getting this highly organized society of ants, and then it being in this human aspect of how we deal, especially in this country, this way we form our society. It showed these hardcore 180s, and at times dualities, because you could see how they run parallel and then they split off in whole different directions. And for you that are might be listening in the community going, what the fuck is Kevin rambling about? Unemployment. It really tells a great tale of what people go through at some of their hardest times in their life.
Yeah.
And he just chose to tell it as an unemployment story.
Yeah, and it's on Comixology if you want to check it out.
I'll check that out.
But it's the first one, it's he gets laid off. The company does a big employee meeting, and they say, hey, we've had the best quarter ever, we're doing great, blah blah blah. And then the next day they lay everyone off. And that actually happened at a huge company that I used to work at, where they had this meeting, and they're like, oh, things are terrible, business is down and blah blah blah. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up. They were like, we had the best quarter ever, we're number one, making so much. And then 2 weeks later they announced layoffs.
Yeah, it's like,
and you're just like, wait a minute. You just got everyone rah. We've had the best quarter we've had in a while. We've got whatever. And that's, and this is, 10, 15 years ago, this happened in a very large company, and it still goes on, and it's still just like, to
me, it's actually what really is great about the story is it's timeless. Many times you can read a story and go, it's this or it's that, or it's perfect for its time. But this is something that you can relate to throughout time.
Right.
It really is. And you don't have to look at it as a monetary thing. We all know that when food gets scarce, we're essentially thinking the same way, right?
Right.
But if we could actually take off and go to Monster Matador. Now, you had, I'm guessing, formulated this story to be something far different than you ever did in the past, because this is hold on to the reins as tight as you can, because you're going to go on a fast adventure.
Yeah.
Could you tell the community, I mean, what a hell of a ride this is?
Yeah. So Monster Matador is, it's me just doing I just wanted to do an awesome action comic, and we're doing a Kickstarter for one right now called Tango the Matadors. And, that one starts media res in the middle of the action. The Matador is being flown by this giant monster, and he breaks free, and the action just, you hit the ground running. I love action movies, and I wanted to do something that was just fast paced, something that was like Die Hard or something, where it's just one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, where you don't really have a chance to breathe and slow down. Mm-hmm. I read a lot of action books now, and they're just like, there's no action in them.
Yeah, you're just like,
what's
this,
it's all about feelings and stuff,
God, what I like actually about, because you guys I've read 1 and 8.
That's all I've sent you. I don't even know what I've sent you guys, so I apologize.
So no, it's fine. It's number 1, number 8, and I looked at the review of Monster Matador, and actually, if you also I'm also Steve is also, I'm cross promoting with Steve too, so I have his number 1 and 8 as well if you want to catch that. But the thing is that Monster Matador is like a fucking, just like it's some shit. It's just over the top. It's like he's being flown in by a bug. He cuts it, and then you have that reunification with maybe your friend or something. He's like,
Yeah.
you, and it looks almost like a frenemy thing with two girls going like, really, bitch,
Right.
like that kind of thing. And you know, it inspired me personally of artwork. So I draw a great matador ass, like in one of
Yeah.
like weird doll.
Christy draws the best asses. So if you ever want an ass commission, Christy is the one to go to.
Yeah, but
now the book that you had sent me, or the Tango of the Matador, the one that I had read, it starts off with basically you see what I was assuming was an uncle.
Oh yeah. I forgot. Yeah, I changed the order.
The daughter, and it seemed like, you know, this Matador, he's one of the few people in the world that kind of learned how to deal with this freakish nature of what just happened all of a sudden,
right.
which is the birth of all these monsters on our planet.
Yeah.
So he's off doing what he knows that he's one of only a few people that can handle it, and which I assume is the father of this daughter.
Yes, yeah.
And he's returning as he gets essentially kind of picked up by, like you said, this weird looking mutant of a bug. And I mean, from there, to me, it seemed that you've been able to really hone in on the advertising aspects that you were able to pick and then put into your sound bites of your actual, you know, word bubbles.
Right.
And you were able to depict the feelings and the storyline with such few words okay, getting to the artist. He was able to actually get your story without you having to depict a whole lot of storyline. And I was like, wow, that's what I'm saying. Now the whole time I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah,
and I'm not having to read. I'm just going through and going, stop.
Yeah. Fabio Alves is the artist, and he did a book called Banjax with Ryland Grant. He also has a Kickstarter right now called The Jump with Ryland, and Fabio. My original Monster Matador is because I drew a bunch of issues of it, but this is like kind of like the relaunch and the new #1. But my stuff tends to lean, because my art style is a little more cartoony, and I tend to do a lot more humor, like slapsticky stuff, you know. Whereas Fabio is like very cinematic, and there's still the humor is still there, and the kind of, you know, but his stuff is just like there's this like, he grabs these like great poses, and there's this like you know, he finds the perfect shots, this intensity to it, and whatever. It's really cool. It's been really fun working with him, because you know, an artist in a lot of ways defines the tone of the book. And
Absolutely.
So it's interesting how working with him has kind of changed my writing and my approach to it to kind of fit his him. I mean, he's a horror guy. So this one, you know, the creature, like, it's called the Volagante. It's this giant fly, and there's one scene where it's like its teeth are coming out, and it's got the thing coming out under its mouth, and it's just like, it's scary, you know what I mean? Like, you're just looking at it, it's just like this terror. And but he always, one of the things about the Matador is never scared, you know. He's always got his pose and whatever. So yeah, it's.
Well, I think Christy said it best. It's over the top, but the cool thing is it's actually depicted and told so well that you're going, I'm in, because you're not. Are you kidding? No, it's never there. And like you said, the artist, there's a couple of panels when you're coming out of the jungle, you know what I mean? And like you said, it's very picturesque. You're like, wow, this is cool. And then you see the monsters in the background, and you're like, wait a minute, that whole coolness just went away real quick.
Yeah, it's you know, the tone is like, I love Peter Sellers, and if you watch like his movies, or like the Pink Panther, you know, when he talks about like Inspector Clouseau, and the thing about like a good comedy actor, even if you're doing comedy, is that you always respect your character, you know. So even though, like, to the audience, Inspector Clouseau is a bumbling idiot or whatever, as an actor, Sellers always took him seriously, you know, and that's where the humor comes out of. So with Matador, it's kind of similar, where he's taking all this stuff seriously, but there's all this kind of craziness going on that, you know, just kind of is off the wall. It's very much like if you've ever watched a telenovela, it's kind of got that kind of heightened melodrama to it and things like that.
Well, and also all sorts of crazy shit happens. Like,
I
was like sitting in like a Salvadorian restaurant and they had a telenovela on, and it was the weirdest thing. Like, this girl who was a teenager, they were having like the take care of the baby class. I'll go through it really quick, but then in that whole scope of a half an hour, she goes nuts because I guess she had a baby or something. Died. And then some classmates of hers took the doll and ripped it up and put blood all over it to fuck with her. And she's like crying and screaming and everything. And the teachers get pissed and they start slapping the students or some shit. And at the end, they're all friends. I'm like nothing happened. Like,
isn't that a normal day of high school or whatever?
Yeah. It's like, say, I went ahead and gave you like a reoccurrence of PTSD because you're a dead baby that something happened. I'm like,
yeah, but we took, you know, I did, if you do the Kickstarter, we have a special, a freebie digital comic that we're giving to everybody who backs it. It's called Tales from the World of Monster Matador. And it's a book I wrote with Ryland Grant. And it basically, it's the night the monsters came, and it's our parody of Batman. And so all the movie Batman sort of take see the bat symbol in the sky, and they all kind of see the calling, and they all go, like, get in their bat suits to go fight this monster, and they all end up on the top of Nakatomi Tower, and they all fight to figure out who the greatest Dark Knight of all really is. But one of the things with like these post-apocalyptic things in Monster Matador is we also did a 3-part story, the Battle for Santa Monica, because I always wondered, like, what happens to famous people, right? Like, what's Arnold Schwarzenegger going to be doing in the apocalypse? And my thought was, well, they're going to be like taking on their character roles, and they're going to be fighting monsters. So you've got, the Matador is in the middle of the Arizona desert, and he's looking for a pilot, and he finds Harrison Ford, who's got slight dementia, and he's got his dog George, who he has full on conversations with, and the Matador needs a pilot to get him to Santa Monica, and of course they crash in the mountains because Harrison Ford can't land a plane.
Right.
And
sir,
Morgan Freeman as God is in the mountains, and Harrison Ford needs another plane to fly, and there's Billy D. Williams shows up, and they have a card game for the Air Falcon, which is an Airwolf modified to look like the Millennium Falcon, which Harrison Ford has to figure out how he's going to win from Billy D. and Stallone and Schwartz. It's just like a crazy. Vin Diesel and all the Fast and Furious guys are in there trying to figure out how to kill this monster, and they all team up with the Matador to take this monster down. But it's kind of like, because a lot of times you see these post-apocalyptic worlds, and it's all kind of like the same type of people. But I always figure, like, well, what are actual people going to do?
Right.
So that's
cracking up when they're at the beach and you saw Arnold Schwarzenegger go get the chopper, and he's like, "There's no chopper."
Right. They've all gone crazy, Yeah.
Oh my God. I remember reading this one, and I think you actually cameoed his tank, because Schwarzenegger actually owns, I think, an Austrian tank. Like
I think he does. He's got a bunch of crazy. He's got like modified Hummers and all that stuff. Yeah.
No, I remember, like, because so when he was, I think, 16, he was conscripted into the Austrian military, because back then you had to serve. I don't know about now, but he drove a tank. So when he got rich enough, I think it was like fairly in the last 10 years or so, he just bought that fucking type of tank.
That's awesome.
And he drives it around on his fucking property. He's like, yeah, all right. I don't know how the fuck he got it over. Obviously they had to like decommission it to a point where, okay, you're not going to blow up shit. Okay.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to remove the firing apparatuses of those things.
Yeah. Like, it's not a turret that you drive around.
Now to kind of bring it all back in the sense of Monster Matador as a world, what is the idea if you were to kind of are you going to build this whole world? Are you going for a 5-6 series arc? I mean,
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got his arc planned, and I mean, I can do 300 issues if I wanted. But it's basically he's gonna travel the world and fight these monsters. Ultimately, thematically, it's really about a father trying to make a better world for his daughter. And the metaphor is monsters like these. No matter how hard you fight, no matter how much you do, there's always shit going on in the world that you just can't stop. And that's kind of like the struggle that he has is that. No matter how many monsters there are, he's never gonna necessarily defeat them all, and he has to come to terms with that over time and whatnot. But it's all done obviously like as a giant monster movie. So like
is in your monster movie that you created is you actually again because that's actually a great analogy because more times than not when you're sitting at your cinema, it's rare that all of a sudden when the movie actually opens up and you start. That all of a sudden you get thrown with all the action. That's not normal.
Yeah.
So what you did was perfectly done. I mean, and the amount of panels that you did and everything is you set the tone.
Right.
Here's a daughter that's missing her father. Here seemingly was an uncle taking care of the daughter out of obligation to the man that has to save the world.
Right.
You already get this feeling of, okay, this is some dire shit going on. And you already are somewhat slightly emotionally attached because of the interaction that's going in these few panels on the few and just in one page. I assume it would be.
Yeah.
But as soon as you turn the page, it's like getting in a car and you don't realize that you're sitting in a 1,500 horsepower machine, and someone says, "Yeah, go ahead and just put on your seatbelt," and you're like, "Yeah, just go ahead and sit back, and just relax." And you sit back, I think you're doing 6 Gs stuck into that seat. And that's what the ride is on Monster Matadors. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm glad that came off that way because I definitely wrote it and tried, designed it that like I really wanted the reader to pick up the book, get to the end of it, and just be like out of breath. You know what I mean? Just be like, holy shit, like that was intense. I wanted to do something that was intense. Because like I said, I read a lot of comics. I read a lot of action comics. I'm just bored. Even like the action in it isn't intense. You know what I mean? Like I want to like be in the action. I want you to feel like you're in there and you're like, on the edge of your seat. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I began at Media Res because, you just kind of get thrown into it and it's disorienting and it kind of just throws you into that kind of world. And now you're suddenly like, you're running and you're looking back and you're trying to, you know what I mean? It's intense. Yeah.
Well, it's like Ghost in the Shell. Like it's a really good.
Yeah.
And it's like can be really, really meta at times. But the problem is sometimes when it goes too meta, it's like they're just talking. I'm like, okay, I understand concept, but fuck, can we do something?
Right.
The original Ghost in the Shell had a perfect combo of action. But with standalone complex, they got way meta. And it's like, after a while, I'm like, what am I? Okay. Why did they animate this?
Yeah. And it's showing, it's the old days, whatever, showing, not telling. And one of the things is I in the book is I try to do the character work through the action. So as you're meeting all these new characters, you're actually seeing their relationships. You're seeing their character arcs form as they're in the middle of the action rather than just having them kind of standing around and being like, hey, I'm so-and-so and this is my friend and this is whatever, my girlfriend and this is the girl I like or whatever. So you're actually seeing them develop through their actions, rather than having that 3 or 4 or 5 page, scene where everybody's like, okay, here's this person, here's that person, here's this person, or whatever. So I'm glad that came off.
Well, and also what I really do enjoy is the fact that you were able to tie in all these different emotions, all these different feelings, and the ride. It's exciting and going, and it's really adventuresome. But beyond that, is you were able to I guess not also take it too seriously, because
Right.
there's moments in there that are actually they're almost tongue in cheekish. And what I mean by that is you didn't have to have him jump back and then go stab that monster in the, to me that was a very action movie sequence, you know what I mean, where he jumps up and he finally stabs it and then he jumps back off the thing and you see it take off and screech, and I'm thinking,
I feel like matadors are kind of to do that, they're always around bulls doing the red tape
absolutely
thing.
oh, and even when he shot the liquid out of his
Oh yeah.
ole, I was like, oh yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't do that, I would have been slightly let down. But the fact that you also integrate a little bit of humor into it doesn't allow the reader to sit there and go, are you kidding me? Is this just going to be this hardcore event? No.
Yeah. You have to balance that, because again, at the end of the day, it's literally a guy with a cape and a sword fighting, Godzilla. So you have to kind of like put your tongue in cheek and relay that to the reader, because with anything, if you take something like this too seriously, it's just kind of like, all right, you don't buy into it,
Yeah.
It
makes me think of Antonio Banderas, in his old movies, like, okay, when in Spain, he was like this nerdy, weird guy, like in Almodovar movies, like he was
tie me up, tie me down, all that stuff,
yeah. And then like when they bring him over, he's like this dashing Spaniard, so it's like I kind of see that channeled in a way. I mean, that'd be funny if they made a movie out of this, a live action, and he was in it.
He was actually, it's funny, he was my model for it.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of because when he came to America, he played these kind of like macho, cheesy, Spanish characters, which was very very different from what he was doing in the Almodovar movies,
Yeah, he was like a weird geek that was socially awkward.
and he would like comedy and stuff like that. But he's obviously older now, but like if he wants to do a movie, I've got a great pitch for like an older Monster Matador, kind of like a Dark Knight Returns for Monster Matador. So call me.
Right? No, that would be awesome. He's really good.
Yeah. Oh, he's great. I mean, it's funny because like he still does the movies with Almodovar, and he's great in them. And that's the stuff where you're like, oh wow, the guy's actually a really great actor, Yeah. And then the stuff he does here, he doesn't really get like good roles. He still plays those like cheesy roles.
I just want the community to know what we're talking about, and who we're talking to is Mr. Stephen Prince. Sorry, Mr. Stephen Prince. We're talking about Monster Matador, and one of my favorite stories also, Unemployment. He's a creator, a writer, and at times artist. Yes.
At times, yes. Yeah. So what happened was I have two little kids now, so that like the time, I just don't have the time anymore. So.
And right now we're talking about Monster Matador, and we're what I've been touching on is how you, and what I think I enjoy most is how you've been able to take a great adventure, very fun and great adventure, kind of tell it in a little tongue-in-cheek manner, have a good amount of humor, but keep the reader really wanting, which I think that's what I'm getting at, another issue. So that's why I'm kind of hitting you up on what kind of world are you building? How big are you going to build this?
Yeah,
it can go on forever. But if someone in the community was to try to get some like chronological order, how would you suggest them to either get a hold of you, read this, or in what manner can they get this from you?
So check out the Kickstarter, Monster Matador Kickstarter.
We're spamming the shit out of that, by the way.
Which is going on right now. It's called Tangle of the Matadors, and this is literally, if you want to start on the book, this is where you start. I mean, this is really like the first issue. I did a previous volume 1 of Monster Matador, which I wrote and drew, which you can get through the Kickstarter, or you can check out monstermatador.com. There's a shop where you can get digital copies also of that, and I think there's a free issue or 2 on there. And that's basically kind of like how he became Monster Matador. So it's kind of like a 12-issue sort of like, I mean, it's broken up into little chapters, 2 or 3 part stories. But that's basically how the Monster Matador became the Monster Matador. So if you want to go back and read that, you can do that too, but you don't have to. And the new one obviously is drawn by Fabio Alves, and it looks amazing. He's 100 times the artist that I am. He's incredible. But the plan with Monster Matador is to do kind of like the Hellboy model, where I'm going to do series of miniseries. So like, it's because like, you know, one of the things, it's kind of intimidating to jump in on something that's, you know, number 24 or whatever. But it's also going to allow me to jump around in the timeline, you know, which will be cool. So, because he's going to travel around the world. You know, like I told you guys, at the end of the day, it's a really easy book to get into because ultimately it's about a guy fighting monsters, you know? It's like you can pick up any Godzilla movie and you don't really have to watch any Godzilla movie before that because it's Godzilla. There's obviously more to it and, you know, thematically and things like that. But in terms of like, you know, being new reader friendly, it's very reader friendly in that way, and that there's not like, you know, it's not like Lord of the Rings where, you know, you jump in halfway and you're just like, you know, what's going on. The Matador, and because the Matador goes from location to location, he's constantly meeting new people. So even though people from the past might show up now and then, it's constantly like a new cast of characters, new locations, like James Bond, you know, in a way, that kind of thing where you can jump around the timeline and never really be lost in terms of where you are, you know. And that was done on purpose because I really wanted, you know, one thing, again, a lot with comics is, you know, you jump in the middle of something and you're just like, what's going on? Or, oh man, do I really have to go buy 50 issues of this thing now just to really catch up or whatever? It's really important to me that, you know, someone is able to pick up the book and not have to worry about like, you know, what's going on here. So
yes,
and that's like one of the reasons. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christy.
No, it's like they're not compelled to like go back 50 million issues and find out the chronology. Like you could pick it up and enjoy it. But if they wanted to, they could. Like you get insights. But it's not like, oh, I need to pick up issue 50 of Gambit because fucking I didn't know he had to do this and everything and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And that is the benefit of indies, you know what I mean? Is more times than not the writers are thinking along those lines.
Right.
You know what I mean? I need to make it basically able to be picked up by anybody at this time. You know what I mean? To be able to have some idea where, not to have a big idea of where the back issues and stuff bring up to, just to be able to pick it up and go. Right. And you know what I was just thinking is, it seemed to me that what you've kind of created is a Latin kaiju, a comic book.
Yeah. That's basically, it's basically what it is. Yeah.
And it's fun because the monsters are seemingly are going to be endless, I would assume. You know what I mean? I've only had a small introduction, but I can only imagine what you can come up with. And as I was reading and I was seeing these monsters, two things kind of hit me. One, a little backstory on the Matador is one of the origin. I was like, okay, I could do with a little origin of that. But really what hit me on it was, well, where the fuck these monsters just come from? I want to see that evolution, that origin story. I was thinking, wow, that could be a whole arc all of its own just to show the mass devastation that was going on before our protagonist came into being.
Yeah, you know and that's something that like we'll explore as time goes on, you know? It's, you know, it's interesting. It's one of those things where you almost like, you don't want to be too definitive about it because, you know, it's the kind of thing where it's actually like, I mean, I grew up when, and you know, all of us, I think, you know, when like things like Star Wars and whatever, you know, like the Clone Wars was this abstract idea of like, no one knew what it was, right? And you got these little hints and tastes, and that kind of like really kind of, that's what made it, you know. It was so much fun to like just think about that and think about who, you know, how Darth Vader became Darth Vader and all that stuff. And then once you get the prequels and you're like, oh, fucking Jar Jar, like,
I hate that guy.
You know, like that, you know what I mean? Like it totally kills. So you have to kind of be careful, you know, in a lot of ways of balancing, like,
Right.
So yeah, over time we'll start to get hints as we start to kind of fan out around the world. We'll kind of meet people who are like, researching this, or who have like, who are like exploring this, and we'll get like little hints of where these things are coming from, why they came, and things like that. But ultimately, the thrust of the book is the Matador. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
So
I
it's-
swear,
I'm sorry, Christy, real quick. I have heard there's I forgot who said it, but vagueness tickles imagination.
Yeah, and exactly. That's what it is. And I remember, for me growing up, that's part of the reason why I do this, is because you're always constantly imagining this stuff. One of the things that turns me off about a lot of stuff today is that everything has to have an answer. Everything is like, and in comics especially, it's like, oh, why was someone wearing, they have an explanation for why the Hulk was wearing purple pants. It's like, who cares, right? He's wearing purple pants, man. Like, you don't need to know why he's wearing purple pants. You don't need to know those things. It kind of takes away some of like the magic,
Sure.
So.
well, I mean, also the thing is that I swear to God, if you ever put a Jar Jar fucking monster in there, I swear to God, please kill him. Just kill him in the fucking monster.
No, he'll be the only one that
So much.
survives.
I
Yeah.
fucking wanted to punch him in the face half the time.
Yeah.
Like around the time when the prequels happened, they actually had a website called JarJarSucks.com, and people would, like draw all sorts of shit and Photoshop all sorts of shit. And one of the fantasy stories was like, yeah, I just wanted Jar Jar to, like, when he had his foot caught up in the pod racing and he would be dragged to death across the landscape and the Tusken Raiders would shoot him. People went all into it. And so, like, if you have to ever have a fucking thing like Jar Jar, please, like, kill him awfully.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find an archived version of that site so you can see all the stories because they're funny.
So, and that he'll go, Misa dead.
I fucking hate Jar Jar so much.
Wow, you did that really well.
Yeah.
Misa, do this.
Oh, Misa dead now.
I think find JarJarSucks.com.
I'm actually at a loss. I got to get a semblance here. Now I know I'm regressing, but because I really want to touch on this one last time.
Sure.
On your unemployment.
Yep.
All right. When that was released, at what time in your life was that released?
That was right after I was laid off. So
When you released?
When I got laid off. So I was unemployed, and I was literally writing that as these things were happening to me, and writing and drawing it as these things were happening to me. I mean, I'll never forget. I had sent a resume in on, I think it was Monster or something, to it was a toy company, and they literally called me a half hour later, which is amazing because you never get that. I'm talking to the woman. She's like, "Oh my God, your resume, blah, 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 blah." And then she goes, "But, after we're talking for 20 minutes, she's telling me about this job, how great I'd be, and how excited they are for someone like my experience, blah, blah." And she goes, and this is one of the cartoons in Unemployment. She goes, "Oh, but, tell me, like, why are you leaving? Like, this is the great gig, And I said, "Well, I got laid off because, and it just went silent,
Oh.
And she's like, "Oh, you know what? Well, we're still not sure if the job is happening yet, and we're not quite interviewing yet. But I'll call you back." Click, just like that. You know what I mean? And I was just like, "Wow."
Well, one of the ones that hit me hard was the one that, because this one kind of happened to me. Is they said, "Hey, look, how soon can you start?" And I said, "Well, I'm available now." And then in the cartoon, they're like, "Well, okay, so you seem way too desperate." Yeah, no. And I'm like, because that's what happened to me is I told them I'm available, and they said, "Could you come in tomorrow?"
Right.
I said, "Well, if you need me, yeah, I'm sure I could." They said, "Oh, okay, we just wanted to know."
Yeah.
They never called me back again after that. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What just happened?
Yeah. It's like, it's a catch-22. Like, if you have a job, right, they want to hire you. But if you have a job, you don't necessarily want another job, right? But if you don't have a job, they don't want to hire you. But then they tell you, well, you should be out there looking for a job.
And you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, somebody wrote down, Unstoppable Cockblocker wrote, "I can picture vagueness, fondling imagination without the brain's consent."
Ooh,
That makes me,
dude, that's
a
right
good one.
there.
Yeah,
that's a line right there, buddy.
and then I read, "What the fuck did I just read?"
That's Marquis, and Marquis, man, he's a very talented man, and he's really deep. So yeah, he cool shit. So again, I know I'm hopping back and forth. So for those of you in the community, we've been mostly speaking about Monster Matador. It's the most recent release. You can find it on Kickstarter. This is a story, basically, like I made a statement, is it's kind of like a Latin kaiju, and we've been talking about this. It is a great adventure tale. Now, there's other stuff written by this fine gentleman that we've also made mention, which is another one that I really love is Unemployment. As I may mention, there's other stuff in here, and what we're speaking about is mostly Monster Matador, and hopefully we can possibly get this out as a hardcover in sometime in the next.
Yes.
I don't know.
What, Unemployment or
No.
Monster Matador? Yeah.
As a floppy.
So it's a floppy right now, and the plan is that we'll collect it. There's a 2-part follow-up after this one called Afrikilla, which takes place in South Africa. And then we're going to do, hopefully do the hardcover. So, yeah. And, yeah. And if any...
So that'll be almost like a trade?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, what's that? It'll be...
That be almost
it'll
like
be
a
all,
trade?
Yeah, it'll be a trade, yeah. All of them.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then if any of your listeners today back Monster Matador, shoot me a note, and I will send you a 200-page science fiction graphic novel that I wrote and drew called The Third. So yeah, this is what I did before Monster Matador. It was like the story is really good, and it's me kind of like the art is kind of getting there. You know, it's good, but it's a fun story. It's kind of like Game of Thrones in space or something. I don't know, with a little bit of Jodorowsky mixed in and stuff like that.
I saw what you had sent me, but being
did I
that
send
I really
it? Did I send it to you or no?
Well, you made you threw it in a brief amount of bio, but I didn't get to do the research on it. But yeah, I would love to. I would love to check it out.
I'll send you one. I'll look at what I sent you. I'll send you some stuff.
Okay, and you may have, and I just didn't notice it. But yeah, that to me, that's why I wanted to cover, because I was like, wow, this is really interesting, because you went from advertisement, you had an understanding of how to really connect with your your potential consumer. And how to get your information out there quick. You went into the toys. You understood marketing. You went through the steps. You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, that really gets it. That's why I guess the reason why all the stuff that you did send me resonated so well with me is how well it came across to me. You do get how to connect with your reader, and you do understand how to properly tell the tale. Yeah. And what I was really, impressed with on the Monster Matador is it came across so well. And I don't know how much you've been able to work directly with your artist, but your artist was able to convey that so well. I only assume that it's because of how well you were able to explain yourself. Plus it's the greatness of your artist.
It's funny. Fabio's in Brazil, and when he came on to do the art, he had an opening in his schedule, and I was looking for an artist, and Ryland, who we talked about earlier, had mentioned Fabio, and because I knew Fabio had done Banjax, I knew his work, and I just sent him the script, and I just said, you know what, just start drawing, and we'll talk about it, as we go along, because I didn't want to waste time. And I knew he could draw. Like, Ryland's scripts are really dense and really complex. And I knew that if he could pull those off, he could pull mine off. And the first page that Fabio sent back was the one where it starts with a close-up of the Matador, and then it pulls back, and you see like he's being held up by the monster's legs or whatever.
Right.
And
like his feet by his shoulders, yeah.
And the horse going, and he sent it, and it was just like, like it was perfect. That's like the Matador I see in my head, And from there, he'll tweak stuff now and then. He'll add stuff now and then, but it's been so smooth. In terms of how we work, and he's just a really great storyteller. For me, because I used to draw, I know that when you're writing, I tend to write my scripts even though they're a lot tighter for him, I still tend to write them knowing that, when you put stuff in a layout and then you draw it, as you're working out the storytelling, things change and you start to see things, how you can tell them better. So Fabio will usually, have a suggestion here or there to change things, and it's always the right thing to do, It's always a great suggestion, and I think it really shows in the pages that he did and in the book that he's a really great storyteller, which only makes me look even better, but I mean, you could have a great script and someone who can't tell a story, and it's just and like we talked about before, it's a very fast-paced, in a lot of ways it's dense, even though there's not a lot of words in those first 10 pages. It's a very dense scene and a very dense sequence, because there's a lot of information that's being conveyed about the characters, about the world, about the situation. And if that doesn't come across in the art without the dialogue, then you're going to lose the reader. The reader's just not going to follow. And the fact that he was able to do that so well that you can read those pages and actually fill in those blanks in your mind without actually having to be told, this is what's going on, this is what's happening. It's he's great. And I want to mention our colorist too, Alex Zeff, who's from Mexico City, and she does her colors are great. She uses these bright colors, which I never would have thought of, but it actually gives it a feel in a lot of ways of a telenovela. There's these like bright, bold colors, and it's not the thing you expect in a comic these days, but she uses it also to convey emotion. She uses the colors, the background colors, which is the technique you used to see in comics back in the 70s and 80s, when they had more of a limited color palette, where they would express mood through color, and she does that really well in this book too. So.
And I was going to state the same thing. The cool thing that I noticed as far as the palettes were concerned is, one, the way the palettes were done, it does depict the type of world that you're trying to create. You know, this, and not only that, it seemed like the palettes that she was using was offering the depth that she was doing. You can see shading in the background, and then the stuff in the foreground was popping, and I was like, okay, this is how they're doing the depth in this. And yeah, I noticed that myself, but it's only because I'm doing it digitally that I can't get a real full page. That I was like, oh man, I know that this could be really, but I'm glad
I can't wait. I can't wait to see it printed, because I think it's going to be really nice. But she's an artist in her own right too, and with Fabio's work, you really need someone as a colorist who understand how to sculpt. How a face actually works and how structure, because he's some of his stuff, it's very detailed, but he leaves a lot because of his style. It's like a very black and white style. So as a colorist, you kind of need to like understand the shapes that he's conveying without actually drawing in there,
Sure.
So.
No, it seems like you all complement one another really well. I mean, your guys' team is working really well.
Yeah.
So I think to wrap all this up, what I would like to do is I would like to direct everybody over to the Kickstarter, and in pretty much every question that you guys have thrown in the chat pretty much can be answered on that Kickstarter as far as costs and everything else. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. And if you scroll down, there's like the story part. If you do take a minute to scroll down, I've added, I actually commissioned a minute-long animation. I don't know if I sent that to you or if I even told you about it, Kevin, but I
didn't even notice.
All right. It's a minute-long animated trailer of the Matador, because people always ask, how is this guy fighting these giant monsters? So I commissioned, it's just a minute long. We've got a theme song on there, and it's an animated, full animation of what an animated series would look like, of the Matador fighting a couple of monsters.
Series.
Yeah,
I could see it easily. I could see this as an animated series. I mean, it would be so fun to watch because of all the adventure going on. I mean, you the whole time you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Great. hey,
and
it was a what?
really
sorry?
quick, Unstoppable is saying
Yeah.
how much is the third, Steve? Can they find it on Comixology or anything?
What's that? Unstoppable? Oh,
Uh,
the third.
the third, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't want you to miss out.
the third is on Comixology. It's on Comixology, and I think the individual issues are maybe 99 cents, and then there's a collections on there. And honestly, if they're not all there, or just email me separately at the third contact at gmail.com, and we'll set you up. If I honestly, it's been on Comixology so long I don't remember. So, but it's there, so you can check it out there. Otherwise, shoot me an email. Happy to hear from you.
Not only that, I
help
think
out.
Marquis, well, you did make a statement, Steve, that if you go to the Kickstarter, that
And
you
if-
would go
yeah.
ahead and
And if you back the Kickstarter, it's the same. Probably work out the same deal. Plus, you'll get Monster Matador. So yeah, I'll send you.
so
a
that's
digital.
probably the route that you want
Yeah,
to do. I would
yeah.
like to
I'll
direct
send you the
everybody-
digital copy of the entire book. So
Yeah, I just recommend everyone get directed over to the Kickstarter, and that will pretty much get you everything. You know what I mean? And I mean that's the way to go, right?
yeah,
Community.
Yes.
So I want to thank you again, Steve, for coming on. I want to thank you again for hanging out with me over
No, thank
on
you. It's fun. Yeah,
Monday
it's fun.
too. Yeah, you know
anytime.
what I mean? And the stories that you had allowed us to read not only was very it was very fun, and you know what I mean, especially Monster Matador, but the way I connected with Unemployment, I personally have to thank you, because I mean it was something for me that there believe me, there were moments in my life that I'll never forget, and there were moments in that book that reflect those moments in my life I'll never forget. So thank you, sir.
That's all. That means a lot, because that's a, like I mentioned earlier. It's been the reactions to that book it's been interesting. So I'm happy that for someone who's been through that it worked as the kind of catharsis that it was for me too. So yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you, Christy. Congratulations, Christy Shin, on making it. Now, you guys, you can go ahead and still go to her Kickstarter. At this point, you guys are getting all the benefits. If you now donate to her Kickstarter, you guys, or not, you know what I mean, your amount will now get you on that top tier level, essentially, right, Christy?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just like right now it's gravy pretty much for the rest of the way. But it's always to get more money. It's better to get more money than to not. What people don't understand with Kickstarter is that Kickstarter does take out certain fees.
Right.
And there are times you can get these things called chargebacks where the charges do not go through. So it's like when people are pushing more and more and more, they're not being greedy. It's just like we're just covering our bases.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it looks like all my backers are good, but just, why not? So I can go and make more stuff for you guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, hey, thank you, community. We appreciate you being here. From us at 1-2 Comic Talk, we're out. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.